For those of you who are new to the Agnostic Agile group, welcome. I'll give you a little bit of an intro about what the AA group is about. So Agnostic Agile was created in 2017 to balance the trends that we've been seeing in the Agile industry, peddling expensive frameworks, getting all the certifications under the sun, pushing a one-size-fits-all approach, which we believe goes against the original spirit and intention of the Agile Manifesto. So our 13 principles that we've created serve as a reminder of what it means to be in service to agility and to put our clients' best interests and context ahead of our framework preferences and other biases we may hold. And we come together as a community through these meetups to learn, share, and grow together. And we hope to accomplish all three this evening. Correct Zoom link permitting. So we've got a really interesting talk for you today, and I'm glad to be continuing our little recent trend of exploring Agile in non-tech, strictly non-tech environments. So we're going to be exploring how Agile and finance teams can come together and create some lovely stuff, how they can share and learn amongst each other, and how they can maybe work better together and collaborate better to achieve organizational agility, or agile, not just for the development and the tech teams, but how we can spread some of that goodness to finance and vice versa. And to do that, we've got both sides of the coin today. So we have a lovely agilist in Anna, and we have Alistair, who's also an agilist, but also worked in finance. So we've got all the right ingredients here to have a really interesting discussion. I'll let Anna and Alistair introduce themselves. While the conversation's going, I think it's going to be very interactive. So prepare to not just sit back, but potentially engage. And if you have any questions, use the chat, and I'm sure we'll have some time at the end for a general Q&A if we need to. So with that, thank you so much for your patience, and over to you, Anna and Alistair.
Great, thank you, Nabil. Great, thank you, and great to be here. Yeah. So, Alistair, you want to go first, as always? Yeah,
sure
as
thing.
always.
So my name is Alistair, and I worked as a chartered accountant for most of my career until about 7 years ago. 7 years ago, I stumbled over Agile and basically wondered where this thing had been all my life, because the way I was always thinking about how we were doing what we were doing in the finance team. Oh, I've just done so. There we go. In the finance team, always it just didn't always make sense to me. And when I finally came across a community which actually had a language for us to explain what was in my head, I sort of grabbed it with both hands. And now, 7 years later or so, and working with Anna and a couple of others, I'm now looking at how do I bring the agility and the finance together so that can we actually, help each other and enhance each other's side of the coin. But for the purposes of this, I'm sort of a little bit more on the finance side for the contrasts of the conversation.
Okay, thank you, Alistair. So I'm Anna, an Agile coach. I am an Agile practitioner since 2010, and I've been working with more than 50 companies. And this topic is actually very interesting because I've always thought that we as Agilists, we need more like finance backup and, finance collaboration to make our decision-making much better for the overall outcome of what we do and for the overall company success. So that's where we met together and we started thinking, how can the finance experts help Agilists gain more insights into financial forecasting and budgeting and reports and plans and everything, and how Agilists can help finance people, work more efficiently and, free up some space for some time for more creative work. So that's how this idea of this workshop actually came up. And we decided to share some thoughts with you. But before we do that, we have put all our thoughts into a mural. And let me just share the link with you. And I would kindly ask you to go through the link and just to follow the content there I'm going also to share my screen so that we are on the same page. But let me just put the link in the chat so that you can grab it. You do not need to register. I mean, if you have never used Mural, it's like Mural, any visual collaboration tool. You just put your name there and then you enter and you can see this canvas. But let me just share my screen with you so that we are on the same page. So this is it. Yeah, this is the Mural. It's like this canvas. If you have never used it, let me just quickly tell you how to use it. So as you can see, you can just move it here and there. I mean, it's locked, so you are not going to be able to break anything. On your right side, you can see the outline, so that you can navigate easily through the content, like pressing on intro will just bring you to intro and so on and so forth. So one thing that you would need to be doing here is, creating sticky notes and sharing with us your thoughts and your answers. So to do so, all you need to do is just double click and you can create a sticky note and just write into it. I mean, it should be easy. Simply double click. You can try it on the canvas so that to make sure that it's working for you. Yeah, just simply double click, create a note and start typing. If you have any problems, issues with it, then let us just know. Okay, that's it in terms of Mural. So let's just get to the intro. Alistair, maybe you can just take it over from here.
Sure thing. Thank you for that, Anna. So let's get started with some startup questions. I think the first thing that that Anna and I were looking to answer is, would both teams benefit? So when I say both teams, I mean the finance team and the Agile teams. And when I say finance, I'm specifically referring here to the finance department within an organization. So I'm not referring necessarily to those organizations which are all about finance, like banks and those sort of institutions, although that is also relevant. But I'm specifically talking about the finance department, which is where I spent most of my career in different organizations. So it doesn't really matter what the organization is. It's a finance department under a CFO or a finance director that we're referring to here. So would both those teams benefit from collaborating together? Is the first question, and hopefully the answer is, well, I hope so, or yes. Indeed, would the organization benefit from finance and Agile actually coming together? Hopefully the answer there again is yes, because what we find is that most Agile teams that are doing really, really well often come up against a problem or a challenge or a blocker when it comes to the month-end reporting or the year-end reporting, or dealing with those things that finance has control over. So the first question is, would both teams benefit from collaborating together? And then the next question then, which comes out, is then, well, what are the things that each could learn from each other? Are there things that we could learn from each other and help each other with? And that's something that we want to explore a little bit today. And to begin the process of bringing those two teams together, we think that we need to do a couple of things. The first is we need to help each team understand the language and the mindset of the other. And I think that's really, really important, because the mindset, it's really a clash of cultures that we see happening here. And certainly as I converse with my finance, my accountancy colleagues about this, it takes a while to explain kind of what we mean by the things that we're doing in the Agile space. So the first thing we need to do is help understand that language and mindset. And the second thing, which I think is crucially important, and this is especially important for the finance teams, is we need to figure out a way of freeing up some time in their incredibly busy schedule. And we'll show you some ideas later about just how much time is spent doing what one could consider non-value add work. So we've got all these, highly educated, highly trained brains in your organization, which are basically stuck doing the fundamental basics, which are necessary, of closing the books every month, and we'll have a look at that. So that's what we are looking to sort of answer and start the conversation on today. And I think we want to leave ourselves with the question: what would happen if one of the somebody in your finance team actually was embedded in your Agile team? So rather than a report, master-servant relationship, what if they actually were sitting together and working together as the projects, as the products were being developed? Mm-hmm. So that's what we want to unpack today.
Yeah. And one more thing, just as an addition, is we want to also, kind of answer this question, like, why work together, right? Because like departments are pulling into different directions. That's the challenge that we are facing. So as Agilists, like we need the finance support for getting the insights on investment, revenues, cost cutting, forecasting, and these kind of things. While finance people, as Alistair mentioned, need to have the free time to free up the space for for collaboration and for more innovative work. So they need to engage into agile teams to get their answers to their questions, like why do we keep on changing stuff as agile teams, right? This kind of things. So maybe let's just go into more details, and we can also share some examples from what we were thinking together with Alistair for the past week or so, or even more. So our overall goal is to collaborate for the mutual benefit of our company success. And for this, we kind of consider this several criteria, right? Generating revenue, cost, governance, that's the first group. The second group would be like collaboration and creativity that we need for our company success. And then we need a strategy, clear prioritization, and quality of work and products. So in terms of these three groups of criteria, I will just focus on this part, like what do we Agilists need from finance? And then Alistair will share what do finance experts need from Agilists, so that we can create this area for collaboration and for communication, for understanding each other. So Agilists need finance help in understanding the revenue, the cash flow, the costs, and the governance, how to do that. They need finance people participation and insights, so for collaboration and creativity. And then we need help understand the impact of our decisions and the changes that we make as agile teams, right? So let's just get into more details. For example, when we are making any decisions, whether to invest in this company, whether to do this product, or whether to do this initiative, we definitely need to understand, to take into account the financial impacts of our decisions and the budgeting. But also when we are working in product organizations, so when we are doing products instead of projects, we do not have the fixed budgets like we do for the projects, right? We need the finance people to understand that this should work like an investment, like investors do in regards to startups, right? So that we have the budget like as an investment for our product, and then so that we have the space to make the changes in accordance to the market needs and customer requests and the value and the business outcome that we want to create. So that's the ultimate metric that we want to follow while we are developing our products. And we need finance people to understand this and to be involved in this process. So this is where the funding, the type of funding and governance would be changed, right? In Agile teams, that's why we have the shorter feedback loops. so that we can also track our budgets in terms of the funding that we have, also that we have the better governance and we kind of have safer budgets. But we also need from finance people to help us understand the potential impact of changes that we are planning, doing this initiative or that initiative. And something that we are usually missing is the financial forecasting. Like if we have already spent this $1,000 or whatever, and we have already implemented these features, if we are continuing the trend, like what would happen in terms of money? Are we going to lose it? Are we going to generate more revenue, et cetera, et cetera? And this is where finance people can help us so that we do not end up, creating failed products or, spending the, just the budget on nothing. And another important aspect where we need help is we want to be trusted, but it's really very hard to get the buy-in from the stakeholders and business and finance department. We are spending a lot of time on creating reports, like using different metrics, but it seems like we are not able to still get this confidence, and we spend a lot of time doing all of these things by ourselves, just because maybe, for example, we do not understand like how finance department sees it. So this is where we need their help to free up some space also for us, not to do these reportings, but just to focus on the business outcomes and the actual work. So we created kind of, if we go to the company report, that's section number 3 in the outline. This is just an example that Alistair shared with me yesterday. And so as you can see, this is a profit, loss, and balance sheets. And so for someone who is not an accountant, and for like the first instinct would be, let's say we have 2 companies, this can be 2 products, this can be 2 initiatives. So if you're questioning like which company or which product to invest in, so the first instinct here would be like, okay, the one that generates more revenue, so let's go with company A. But yesterday Alistair told me very interesting thing that, okay, so each financial expert would just go through each row, and each row means a lot, because for example, if you check the fixed assets, like company B has more like $80 million here, and the company A has $50 million, meaning that maybe they have these assets that would be generating revenue in the future, not now. So maybe their revenue would be much better in the nearest future than the company A. So these are the things that you can consider while we Agilists might lack this. And also, like as an example, usually what we do, we include the stories, the features that we work on as expenses, but maybe these are not expenses, these are assets, and the expenses are only the bugs and technical debt that we have, because those stories are going to generate revenue in the future. They are not released yet. So yeah, maybe Alistair, you can also give some more insights on this particular example.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Before I spend a little bit more time on this, just as you were talking earlier, just a second ago, Anna, one of the things came to my mind about this idea of our language. In one of the recent gigs that I was involved in, I made the huge mistake of assuming that the stakeholders understood the Agile language. And so when I was reporting to them, I reported to them using Agile speak. They literally, this is, I'm going to edit for the sake of, I'm going to edit the words out that they use that we don't want to be on recording, but they basically told me to stop and go home, and stop talking about this crazy Agile stuff. We need to deliver this project. We need to deliver the product, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of, I had made the assumption that they knew what I was talking about. I also made the assumption that simply because of my background, that they would be listening to me. When we went away, we licked our wounds. The team that I was working for, we reorganized our presentation, and we went back and we spoke their language. So we translated the agile delivery into a traditional reporting speak, and then we were able to progress with the project. But it is important to understand that to an accountant, speaking in terms of some of the metrics that we love in Agile, and speaking in terms of some of the things that we talk about, literally sounds like, we've got a Ouija board and, or we are, got flowers in our hair or something. It just sounds crazy. And we need to understand how to make those translations. And what is exciting about the next phase of agility, I think, is that as we bring finance on board and as we help them understand our language, and as we help each other understand their language and mindset, we will do this. So just something that came to my mind as you were chatting.
Yeah, definitely.
But what we have here is a set of accounts which are for two companies for one financial year. Now, looking at this, this is the sort of information that people are asked to make business investment decisions on. Which company would you pick? The answer is that it's actually impossible to really make a proper decision without the other information that exists behind these numbers. Now, as an accountant, we know how to ask those questions about what the numbers actually mean, where they've been derived from, and what's happening. So, for example, it looks here like this company A has got 70 million of cash. Now, that sounds like a good thing, but this is only a snapshot, a moment in time at the end of the financial year. Now, what happened the following day? Because we've seen in finance all sorts of things where, millions and tens of millions of pounds are moved around accounts for that snapshot, which you see here, only to find that they've actually, that's not actually what's been happening in reality. Or the very next day, that 50 million goes, or 50 of that 70 million goes somewhere else. So the point is that looking at information like this isn't the whole story, and we need to work together to help each other. The second part of this, so that's one thing. The second part, which is important, is when we're working on a project, we think about the budget and we think about cash flow, and we assume that if cash is spent, that's gone and that's done. But where does it appear in the balance in the accounts? Is it a cost of sales item, or is it maybe an administrative overhead item? In other words, it impacts your profit margin, or is it something that gets capitalized and put onto the balance sheet? If it's put onto the balance sheet, if you have an asset on the balance sheet, it basically means that you can amortize, you can spread that cost over the coming years as you match your cost to revenue. So the idea with accountancy is you're always looking to match. So if over the next 10 years I make 10 million a year, what are my costs? And if I've spent all those costs in year one creating my asset, I then spread that 80 million over the next 10 years and share that against the cost, or match that against the cost of the income, match that against the revenue that I'm receiving over that period of time. So it's important, I think, as Agilists to know, if I run an experiment and it's failed, or if I have done some work on something and we have created this new feature, where does that go in terms of the accounts? Because it will matter from the perspective of what we're presenting to the board and what we're presenting to the outside world as to how stable and how secure our company is. Yeah. So the 30 million of extra assets, if that had gone into the profit and loss account, this company would be showing a negative margin, a negative net profit margin of 28 million. Right? That's what you would show here if you didn't account for this properly. And the finance team needs to understand Agile better to know how to account for it properly.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that sometimes whenever, the management thinks that things go bad, like we are spending too much money and we have like a lot of expenses, maybe that's not true. But we just do this subjectively, showing them the changes that this needed to be done, etc., because it's an innovation, a new technology language, or a new features that the market needs. But we are not able to convince them because we have put it in the wrong place, like in terms of the financial sheets. We are just showing those as expenses, while those might be something else, like assets or something else, right? So yeah, that's where, for example, when we had the talk, I felt like, you know, we Agilists, we definitely need help. So let's just go back to section number 2. And actually, those were some things that we came up with, some ideas that we came up with. What would Agilists like help with? So within a minute, let's just, you know, create some sticky notes like near these ideas here that we have shared. And maybe if you have other ideas, like what would Agilists like help with, like from finance people, just create sticky notes next to these ideas, and please share with us what are your thoughts. What would you like help with? Like if there are Agilists in the group, I'm sure there are.
And if you want to put those into the chat as well, we can always copy them across from the chat.
Yeah, so simply just double click, yeah, create a sticky note, yeah, and just, you know, yeah, write down your ideas. Maybe we can even, I don't know, set a timer. Yeah, if someone needs help with creating sticky notes, again, simply double click. Yeah, you can just put it anywhere there. I mean, no worries. You are not going to ruin anything in the table. Just put it there. Yeah. Maybe we can even, you know, do a timer so that we know when to continue.
Perfect. We've got a minute, 50 seconds.
Yeah, I've put a minute. So yeah.
And also, if you're struggling necessarily to think of something immediately, then obviously please get in touch later, or in this session or after the session, because understanding what it is that teams that are doing the doing and are working, making it happen, are struggling with when it comes to these things. And I can see some of the ideas already popping up here, which is great.
Yeah. For example, we had this idea, you know, this question that, like, we Agilists, what we would ask the finance people is like, why do you keep trying to reconcile two things which are no longer relevant to the outcome, right? Like, why do you want us to, you know, stick to the project or to the changes that make no sense anymore? So we have to change them. So that's one question that we would like, you know, finance people to get their insights on this one.
Brilliant.
Okay, time is up. So maybe we should, maybe we should go just to the practice part very quickly. Thank you very much for the notes. Do we want to, I mean, I guess we don't have the time to go through the sticky notes, right? Unfortunately. But do you want to just go through it very quickly?
If you go to the next section, I'll just have a quick read, and then if there's anything we can answer immediately, we can I will.
Okay. So if you go to practice for Agilists number 4, we have kind of 3 questions for you. So how long does it take to explain and get the buy-in from finance and business stakeholders, let's say to explain where those 100K go? How long? So you can just give us a number, right? Then the second question that we would like, you know, your answers on is what the data would help you better understand the results of your work. And the third question is, how will the work and effort be accounted for in the financial statements? So you can just pick one question, or you can answer all of those. 1 minute, 2 minutes, let's say 1 minute, so that. Wow, people say 1 hour. I guess that's for the first question. Yeah, that's true. Not long if engaged upfront. Okay, we've got some great ideas here. Okay, yeah. I know that 1 minute is not enough, but yeah, we still have a lot to cover. So what do we have? Like, let's take the first question. We have 1 hour. We have not long if engaged upfront. They can work with us to help streamline our accounting practices if engaged early. That's true. A week quite often to coach product team members, including finance. Depends on the business case and the revenue opportunity. Well, that's good for you if it takes 1 hour. Any comments that you would like to make, Alistair, here?
I think that certainly, if as one of the questions in the chats points out, is how agile is the finance team in these scenarios? And I think that if the team is not very agile, it can take a very, very long time. So in one of the other gigs that I was in, which was a great gig, and we did really, really well. But one of the things that happened when I first arrived was it took me a whole day each week to prepare a report for the stakeholders to prove that the 10 agile teams that we were working with were actually doing the job that they were being asked to do, and that 20% of my time doing that was actually a good investment of time, because it meant that the teams themselves didn't need to between them all try and answer all the questions that were being asked of them or of me in this situation. What was important, so for me, it was about 20% of my time to explain what was happening, in the week, and so on. What was interesting was that once we created confidence, once we could show the week after week that the things were stable and that things were working, I was able to go to the stakeholders and say, just to let you know, this is currently taking an entire day each week to produce these reports for you. Is there a way that we can actually change this around so that you can get the information that you need without it all being funneled through me and so on? And what was great was they actually said, we now know that we can trust the teams, therefore we don't need as much reporting. We can actually do a little bit more light touch. What would have been ideal and eventually happened was, as somebody pointed out in the question, what would Agilists like help with? Well, somebody said being part of the team to help streamline processes, get finance involved early, as finance people typically understand the end-to-end. And I think that's what happened with the stakeholders, is we actually managed to get them in to talk to the teams. And when they talked to the teams, they looked into the whites of people's eyes and saw how passionate they were about the product that we were creating and about the outcomes that we were looking to deliver. They then backed off in terms of wanting all these fanciful reports, which just took forever to produce.
Mm-hmm. Paul mentioned very interesting thing here in the comments, like if budget has been reserved, explaining where the 100K went is easy. Well, yeah, definitely it would be easy if it's reserved, but to get the buy-in, usually it's not that easy. I mean, we can say that we spend the 100K on these and these features, but still the questions might pop up, right? Like, why did you change the plan? I mean, why did you do it, right? If they don't understand like the innovation element, why do we do the change? Or how does it affect the overall, revenue or the things that we were just talking about? Then I think at some point they are going to be back to this question again and again. That's what has happened to me as well. Okay, you know where you spent this money, but it's usually if you don't have the help of the financial experts, then it's really hard to get the buy-in. And it seems like the answers that we got to our second question is exactly what we were talking about. Like, what data would help you better understand the results of your work? Accurate forecasts, running costs before and after, a clear statement of the outcomes, epics, clarity on open CapEx split if needed for the team. Yeah. So what would happen if the finance expert was part of the team and they could help us, doing this so that we do not spend a lot of time creating those reports ourselves, but having, people who have done it like thousands of times and they know how to put this into, better sheets and better views and better understanding, right, in terms of finances.
Perfect. So what we see here then is that we know we answered the first two questions. Would there be of benefit if finance and agile work together? And are there things that we can learn from each other? And it seems here that there are things that we can certainly be looking to help each other with. For us to then understand what we do with that. So, and for example, the concept of outcomes is not one that is very familiar to most finance folk. So they are very used to outputs. So they will, they know that at the end of each month, they need to produce a deck of slides, which is normally 10 to 20 slides long, which has the financial information, which of trying to explain what has happened in the organization in the last month. And that is being reported up to the finance director and so on. So that's an output. That's very much we look at, and it needs to be shiny, it needs to be well polished, all the numbers need to make sense, they need to add up, they need to reference across all the files. All of that happens. What is happening there is that the numbers that we extract from the system is normally done within the first hour or two of the first day of the month-end close. I don't know how long it takes in your organizations for finance teams to close the month, but on average, when I've been working, it's taken our team sort of somewhere between 6 to 8 days to close every month to close the reports. And if we go to time allocation, Anna.
Time allocation, yep.
If we go to time allocation, we can see here that a lot of that time then is spent, if you look at the blue lines, a lot of time is spent on the year end, the quarter end, and the budgeting processes, and very little time, less than 20% or so, is spent adding value. And what we want to do is help organizations, and many organizations have done this already, and we have some examples we won't have time to go into today. But if we go down to the next item, the time allocation communication before. We can see here, so an average month is 22 days of work, and this is roughly how finance are spending their time. As you can see, a huge amount of that time is spent on reporting what's happened in the past, and then creating this annual budget. Sometimes it can take a lot longer than the 4-5 months I've shown here. All this time spent creating this annual budget, which from the moment that January 1st comes, things start to change, and all finance are then doing is trying to reconcile back to this annual budget that's being created. If we go to the next slide, then, if you bear that one in mind, you'll be able to see this when you look at the slides later. What we could do is we could change things around a little bit using a couple of techniques, and we could actually create all this value. This means that all that information, all that knowledge, all that ability that we have locked up in the finance department, we could actually free that up to engage with the Agile teams. And there are just a couple of questions that I would ask a finance team to consider in order to move from before to after. The first one is, when it comes to your month-end reporting, how much do the numbers change from the first half day of your month-end cycle to the last day of your month-end cycle, no matter how long that is? How much do those numbers actually change with all that work, 6-7 days work that go into preparing those numbers? How much changes? My personal experience and the experience of my colleagues is that they change very, very little, but it's all to do with how we are perceived to have to present that data. So that first thing is observe that and observe whether you could actually present that in a better way within the first day of the month-end close. The second question that I would ask then is, when it comes to your budgets, could you look over the last 5 years of your annual budget for your organization, compare that to the actual results at the end of that year, and do that for the last 5 years and see how accurate that budgeting process was. Again, what we will typically find is that really within the first quarter of the year, that budget is no longer no longer helpful, and we need to be rebudgeting, reforecasting, changing what we do and how we do it. And again, finance need help from Agile professionals to understand what and how they do to change that, which then of course would answer one of the questions that we had in one of the post-its, with is how can we make the budgets more appropriate, more flexible, more adaptable to what is actually happening on the ground. But I think we can easily move from before to after with a few simple ideas. We need to do this, however, in a way that doesn't scare the living daylights out of the finance team. We need to do it carefully and slowly, and explain what is happening, explain the risks, explain the outcomes, and explain why what it is, and experiment and test with it as we go. Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to spend some time here? Just
I think we've covered a lot of that already. What finance need help with. I think I've sort of covered that in the thing. We can read it later. Okay.
Let's go to the practical work then. Again.
So here the thing that finance need for what are finance trying to do? Well, they are signing off a budget, say for I don't know, £100 million or euros. So what is happening is they are then responsible for what happens. I think what a lot of people outside of finance don't understand is that if something goes wrong financially, if money goes missing, if there is a problem, if we lose a lot of money, if there is any challenges, there are two people who end up in jail. And the first one is the finance director out of an organization. So that finance director is very, very keen to have total control over the numbers. And the way we traditionally do that is by spending a lot of time planning, and then spending all of our time trying to reconcile back to that plan to prove what's happened to the numbers, to the money, to everything that we're doing. So but really, if we could figure out a better way to understand that Agile teams are not wasting time, they're not wasting money, they're actually invested in delivering the best possible outcomes. If we could figure that out, then we could help finance to let go of the reins a little bit and actually contribute, as we've said before, with proper planning, proper reforecasting, proper prioritizations, and so on. Okay.
So can we spend another minute just, again, you can pick one question or maybe, all of those three, just to share your feedback, your answers to this. How does finance know Agile teams are not wasting time or money? If you know, of course, this is from the finance perspective. How long does it take to close the month end or the year end? How to be involved in the decisions rather than sort it out after the fact. So if we have finance people within our group, then yeah, please jump in and share your thoughts. Oh, great, we have both. Okay. Nabil, while we are waiting, are we going to end at like in 6 minutes, or we have time since we started later?
No, of course, we have time as long as the audience is okay to stay on.
Okay, perfect.
It's, yeah, totally normal to run up to an hour and a half if we need to.
Okay, perfect.
Just
okay.
Brilliant. So I think certainly the transparency element is a huge one, and if we could, various organizations talk about radical transparency. We see Steve Denning talking about it. We also know that the corporate rebels talk about this a lot as well in their work. And one thing that is interesting is finance people typically are afraid, a little bit afraid of transparency. Your average finance bear person is a little bit afraid of that, because we have been taught to not share too many things with too many people. We certainly don't share the financials with people who don't need to know, etc., etc. Those organizations where that has been changed and where full transparency has been given around the numbers, around the finances, and vice versa, that exactly leads to finance knowing that teams are not wasting money, and therefore they don't need, as I said earlier, all that reporting that comes in. The person who wrote, "I'm both a finance and agile practitioner," would you mind expanding a little bit on what you've written there? Because I think that's really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It was me, Andrew Jones.
Hello, Andrew.
Look, I started off as a finance director back in the late 80s when we were using lean and things like that. And for every project we had, what we had to decide is we knew what the outcome needed to be. We needed to deliver maybe a product or a project, and we were being allocated a cost purely on the basis of a return on investment. But that only came through once you've actually gone through the discovery period, where you then did further exploration.
Yep.
And then you came up with what strategy, what tasks do we need to achieve to deliver it? And only on that basis could you see whether the budget was sufficient or insufficient to start off with.
Exactly.
And I've always said the finance team is actually an enablement.
Yes.
They are not. The executive is responsible for the overall outcome. And once finance plays their part by reporting, these are not companies ruled by accountants anymore. That was very much 70s, 80s style. We've moved on from there. You know, and I come from, I was a director of AT&T, you know, I've been a director in some very large companies. And it really does come down to, I think the average finance person has moved on as well. He does understand that a business case being put together is only just the start. Because once you've got a business case that says, I need this, my customers need this product or deliver this program or project, then we can say, okay, is it feasible to deliver it for 100K or not 100K? Where did the 100K come from in the first place? And this is where your business analyst, we call them financial planning and analysis members of the finance team, are not just a member of finance, but they are allocated to a tribe or a team or something like that. And that only comes about once you've actually trained the whole organization. You know, if you take something like Vodafone, for instance, and I give it an example, no project is signed off until they go through that whole process of, this is the outcome. Do we understand the outcome we want to achieve? Now go away and look and discover how we can do it. And that involves, you know, the marketing and sales team. It involves everybody, every aspect, the customer service department. It includes operations, and finance plays a key part in saying, if we want to do that, how much is it going to cost? So it's about breaking it down to tasks, I'm afraid. You know, some people might say then you create a backlog from there and you move on from that. And me as a finance director, I have access to every single Jira board. So I can see how progress is being made. Is their estimation good or not good? You know, if they're forever overspending because they're not estimating, is it because the teams are frightened of putting the truth out there? And that's where I'm afraid, you know, trust has to become part of it. There has to be true transparency, and there has to be complete collaboration right across the whole patch. Or we would go back to the days of waterfall, where nobody signs off anything until, you know, you can't move to the next stage till this has been done. Which just slows the whole process down, and in the end costs a lot more money to deliver.
Exactly, it does. No, that's exactly right, Andrew. And I think most of us and most of the Agilists on the call are probably thinking, if only you were the CFO where I've been working recently, because I think that, yes, every now and again, we come across someone like yourself, Andrew, who is enlightened and who is able to help with that and thankfully introduce these ideas to some big corporates out there. And unfortunately, my personal experience again with you know, the big the FTSE hundreds and the and so some big American companies as well, some global companies, is that basically most agile teams are just you know, totally constrained by what is happening. And so it's great to hear that there are stories out there and actual examples like yours of this actually taking place, what we want to take place. So thank you for that. That's really cool.
I can actually tell you, the Institute of Cost of Management Accountants and the Institute of Chartered Accountants, Agile is right up there as a topic at the moment.
Interesting. Very interesting. Good to know. No, thank you. That is encouraging for all of us. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, next piece then, Anna.
Yeah. Actually, I think that was it. If we want to, we can get into more like Q&As here. Otherwise, we have the feedback part. So here we want to hear like your key takeaways, any feedback that you might have for us to come up with, you know, better topics for the future. Yes, Paul. Yeah.
Hey everyone, sorry to just a quick. So I've just done this actually in the company that I work for, and
I'm sorry, Paul.
Can
Is it only?
you hear me?
Not very good.
No.
Very
I
good.
know it's on my side, but it seems like your voice
No.
is
Breaking up.
Right. Okay. I'll leave it for now. I'll leave it for now.
If you could,
Feel free to write your question in the
if you
chat.
could, that'd be great, Paul.
Yeah, write it in the chat and then we can
Thank
take
you.
Yeah. So please take a minute, everyone who has participated, just to put your key takeaways and feedback. It's this section number 9 in the outline.
Are we okay to ask questions as well?
Absolutely, please do.
Absolutely, yeah.
I have one. So if anyone in the audience has one, please feel free to use the hands up functionality or just unmute. But while we do the feedback, I was curious. We've talked a lot about finance engaging with Agile Teams, and I was curious if there are other collaboration partners not on the team level that you'd also recommend. And I'm probably showing my ignorance on the topic around where the best place to start is. But at least with the clients that I work with, the teams are usually not exposed to a lot of the financial elements, and there might be people above the teams who handle that for them. So I'm curious if you would start on the team level with that collaboration, or if you've seen success starting somewhere else, like maybe the heads of a certain department to help with them, because I know that they probably get quite involved in how the team engages with finance.
I think Andrew has an answer. So yeah, Andrew, please go ahead.
I'm sorry, I seem to be dominating things. I don't mean to. But, there's areas like risk and compliance. Certainly if you're in the insurance or banking world or any element of financial services, or you're in meditech and health and things like that. At the end of the day, you've got to understand who has to participate in the team. And the first person you pen in is your business analyst stroke finance person, as well as the operations, the customer services. They can't just opt in and opt out. I've seen so many insurance products fail because they produce the product only for the risk and compliance person to come back and say, oh, well, that breaks regulation 9. You can't do it that way. People can't opt in and opt out of a project team or a product team. They have to be there from day one, and they have to work as a team. And it's the agile ways of working coach, program manager, project manager, who's responsible for managing that team. And you're all equals. You've all got a say. And it's for that program project manager to become the agile listener. If you go onto my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that I need a thing called the agile listener. Everybody needs to learn how to listen, and to listen without judgment, and then to ask questions if they don't understand what the person is saying, to get clarity before they even then say, I don't think that will work. So, I go back to finance teams are enablers. They're just as much a part of the team as the operations director, the IT delivery manager, whoever, yeah? They have to be there from day one to be able to say, guys, can you please, share with me where you see the obstacles to achieving this outcome? Because 100K might not be enough, because the IT delivery man, for instance, might say, well, you might want it for 100K, but it's going to cost 250K to deliver. Mm-hmm. That then comes back to the teams and says, we need to go back to the executive, and we talk about flight levels, beyond budgeting and things like that. So it's important that everybody sort of understands that it's a team effort of which finance is part of.
Correct.
They are not the yays and nays of the business. They're the enablers.
And I think that's exactly where we want to get to, and it's helping organizations to to step in those directions. Again, if someone, someone like yourself at the right level in the organization has the views that you hold, obviously it's very easy to say, okay, I want my finance folk to go away and work with the teams, and don't worry about, this month end that we're going to close. This is how we're going to do it, and this is all I care about is the numbers as they come out after the first day. I don't need you to spend 6 days closing the books. So what we want to do is in order to help the community, both communities, is to take the examples that Andrew is talking about and help those teams to understand that they can do that too. Because I think finance needs to know that it needs to be able to let go of the reins. And by doing so, we're actually going to help the business. One of the arguments that I put forward is this: yes, you, by controlling everything and by beating everyone up every month on their numbers, and by asking them what they did with this, that, and the other, you have come in on budget. Your revenue is on budget. Your costs are on budget. Hurrah! But what about those 8 opportunities through the year that you missed because you wouldn't allow the Agile teams to bring to you these new ideas, these insights that they had, and these what things that they could do to make it even better? And I wonder whether there is we have a financial duty to make sure that things are safe. But don't we also have a financial duty to make sure we maximize our potential as an organization? And if we are constraining teams too much, as has not been happening in Andrew's organizations, if we're doing that too much, are we also then maybe culpable for missing what we could have done? And that's I think one of the big things for me that I'm interested in exploring and helping finance teams to explore that. But coming back to the full circle is we need to be able to have that conversation across the divide, so that it's not a divide anymore, and so that people understand, as Andrew says, as Anna has said as well, if we can put the finance people, I think it was one of the first things I said in my introduction, if we can put the finance individuals into the teams, we can then have ourselves a much better place. Nabil, to answer your question about at what level do we work, you work at the level that needs that help. So a team, for example, in my example, working on a £2 billion project, there were 20 accountants, right? So 20 accountants supporting that organization, but all we were doing was closing the books and doing the budgets, and closing the books and doing the budget. If we can create some time to go and help those organizations, where do they need help? It might be, in my case, I found the best place to work was the account executives, because by helping them with the financial impacts of what was going on, they could then support their organization better with the budgets and so on. But sometimes you want to do it at the individual level. So that terrible answer is it depends. but at all levels.
Yeah, there's a great way of working called beyond budgeting, which a lot of finance people are reading the book. How many people are aware of beyond budgeting?
Yeah,
it's a great book, and it's been around for years, and it's all about how can you possibly budget properly if you're not aware of what the people who have to deliver are saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I liked about Beyond Budgeting was that, Beate himself admitted that it's not just budgeting, and that the name can be misleading, but that it's, as much a culture and behavior shift as Agile is. So it sort of marries those more tangible suggestions, like how you do budgeting and forecasting, with the types of behaviors. And I think Alistair, Anna, and I were chatting just before the event, and we talked about, if you want to change the outcome, you start with the behavior. Or if you want to change how you do things, you start with the behavior first. So I liked how it's kind of a management model that helps address the behavior and culture with some practical ways you could do things differently.
Okay. Do we have other questions, or we wrap it up? Okay. Okay, then I guess
Did
that's
Paul
it.
manage to get this question in?
It seems like no.
Unfortunately, I don't think Paul has written his question. So, last call for questions. Lovely audience who has been very patient with us today. Okay, so Anna and Alistair, thank you so much. This is where I do my awkward round of applause. It's a lot better when it was in person, back when we used to do physical meetups. But thank you so much. This was really inspiring. I think the feedback there and the link is there for people if they want to continue to refer back to this. Is that fair? Will it still be up?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. The link is open, so you can use it anytime. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, on behalf of everyone, thank you so much. Apologies for the little mishap at the beginning. It's been a really inspirational conversation. I think bringing these two functions together, or these two capabilities together, will definitely enable better results than if we were to just work alone. And I'm really glad to hear from Andrew, to hear that Agile is a topic in some of the accountant areas and spaces and forums. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more collaboration across these two. But thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. And thank you very much again to Anna and Alistair.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Have a
everything.
great evening.
Take care.